You are not crazy for holding out hope. You are hooked. This is not romance. This is a calculated scarcity of attention designed to keep you emotionally addicted.
You know that feeling, right? That exhausting mix of hope and total confusion? Well, it has a name: breadcrumbing. And let's be clear, this isn't just someone being bad at communication. It is a manipulation tactic. It's a way of weaponizing inconsistency to keep you in a state of forever waiting, hoping for a relationship that, by its very design, is never going to happen. In this explainer, we are going to pull this pattern apart piece by piece. We'll look at the tactic, we'll uncover the psychological trick that makes it so ridiculously powerful, and most importantly, we'll map out a clear strategy for you to break its hold and get your emotional freedom back. So, here's our roadmap. First, we'll define the tactic, getting really clear on what breadcrumbing actually is. Then, we'll get into the trick, which is the psychological engine that makes this whole thing run. After that, we'll explore the addiction, and look at the actual brain science that makes it feel so impossible to just walk away. Then, once we have all that knowledge, we'll move into the defense, with real actionable steps to break the cycle. And that brings us to the end, the choice, which is really the fundamental decision you have to make between a false sense of hope and the actual freedom that comes with clarity.
Okay, let's dive right into part one, understanding the tactic itself. This is not about someone being bad at texting. This is about the intentional weaponization of ambiguity.
At its absolute core, breadcrumbing is exactly this, a manipulation tactic. It's the calculated art of giving someone just enough. A random text, a like on a social media post from 6 months ago, a vague hint at future plans, all to keep their interest on a low simmer. But here's the crucial piece that separates this from just being flaky. There is zero intention of ever following through with real commitment. It's basically a performance, designed to keep you, the audience, hooked, without the performer ever having to actually do the hard work of putting on the show.
And this tactic gets a massive boost from our modern world. First off, digital communication makes it just so easy. A quick text takes almost zero effort, but it can have a huge emotional impact. Second, it's often coming from a place of emotional avoidance or even narcissistic behaviors. The person needs that validation, what's often called narcissistic supply, but they don't want the vulnerability of a real connection. And finally, you see this dynamic thrive wherever there's a power imbalance, not just in romance, but even at work, where a boss might dangle a potential opportunity to keep you engaged without ever planning to give it to you. And I really need to be crystal clear on this point. This is not an accident. It's not someone being forgetful or super busy. Those are the excuses we tell ourselves to try and make it all make sense. The hard truth is that it's a deliberate, calculated move to keep another person emotionally tied to them, maybe as a backup plan, or maybe just for an ego boost. The ambiguity isn't a side effect of their life. The ambiguity is the entire tool. So what's the end result for the person on the receiving end? It's a state we can call relational limbo, and it is an incredibly painful and draining place to be. You don't feel like you're in a relationship, but you're not really single either. You're just stuck. Your brain is working overtime, analyzing every tiny crumb of attention for clues about a future that the other person has absolutely no intention of building with you. And we have to understand this. This limbo isn't a mistake, it is the intended outcome.
So, if the goal is to keep you in that limbo, how do they do it? What's the engine that powers this whole thing? Well, that brings us to part two, the trick. This is where we go beyond the definition and get into the science of what makes this so powerfully effective. It's a principle called intermittent reinforcement, and this, right here, is the science of the hook.
Now, that isn't just some fancy phrase, it's a very real, well-documented psychological concept. Basically, intermittent reinforcement means rewarding a behavior, but doing it sporadically, unpredictably. And it turns out, this is one of the most powerful ways to lock in a behavior. The perfect example is the slot machine, right? If a slot machine paid out every single time, you'd get bored. If it never paid out, you just walk away. But it's because you never know when that next reward is coming that you just keep pulling the lever over and over again.
And in the world of breadcrumbing, this exact principle plays out in a predictable and pretty vicious three-part cycle. It starts with the bait. That's followed by your entanglement, where you naturally invest more. And then the manipulator hits you with withdrawal and evasion. And this cycle doesn't just happen once. It repeats again and again, tightening its grip each time. All right, let's break down phase one, the bait. This is the crumb. It's a tiny, totally non-committal signal that takes almost no effort. You know what I'm talking about? That late-night you-up text? It hints at intimacy without actually offering any. Or that random emoji reaction to an old story. It says, I see you, but nothing more. And of course, the classic, we should totally hang out soon. It's so powerful because it's just enough to light that spark of hope, letting you fill in all the blanks.
So what's your natural human reaction to that bait? You lean in. And that's phase 2, the entanglement. You answer the text right away, you try to pin down some actual plans, you start investing more emotionally because you want more of that good feeling. You're trying to turn that little crumb into a real meal. It's a completely understandable response.
And just as you lean in, looking for that connection, they pull back. This is the make or break third phase, the withdrawal and evasion. They'll suddenly get really slippery if you ask what's going on. They'll cancel those plans you tried so hard to make, usually with some lame excuse and no offer to reschedule. Or they might just go completely silent, poof, gone, for days, maybe weeks. That's the intermittent part kicking in. The reward, their attention, is suddenly gone. The slot machine just went cold. And the result of this up and down cycle is just devastating. The pattern of high hopes followed by a sudden disappearing act doesn't make you give up. Paradoxically, it actually makes you try harder. It creates this state of chronic, anxious preoccupation. You start to obsess, rereading old messages, analyzing every little thing. What did I do wrong? What did that emoji really mean? And now you're fully hooked, just anxiously waiting for that next little crumb, that next hit of bait.
So why on earth is this cycle so incredibly powerful? To really get that, we need to dig into the psychology of both people in this dynamic. This is where we see how a real addiction gets formed.
So let's just ask the question straight up. Why does this feel so much like an addiction? Why is it so incredibly hard to just walk away from someone who is giving you basically nothing? Well, the answer is in our own brain chemistry and our deepest emotional needs. And this right here shows the toxic mismatch perfectly. On one side, you've got the manipulator. They're driven by a need for ego validation, for control. Your attention is what's called narcissistic supply. It feeds their ego without them having to do the hard work of a real relationship. On the other side, you've got the target, whose vulnerability comes from a very human place, a basic need for attachment and connection. This gets complicated by something called cognitive dissonance. That's the mental gymnastics we do when someone's actions, like ignoring us, totally contradict our belief that they like me. We create excuses like, oh, they must be busy, just to hold on to that hope.
And here is the neurological trap. That unpredictable crumb, it creates a massive dopamine hit in your brain's reward center. And get this, neuroscience shows that our brains actually release more dopamine for inconsistent rewards than for predictable ones. Think about that for a second. The chemical rush you get when they finally text you back after days of silence can feel, on a biological level, more intense and rewarding than the calm, steady feeling of a healthy, predictable relationship. You are, quite literally, getting addicted to the roller coaster. And over time, this cycle is just corrosive. It slowly but surely grinds away at your self-esteem. You start to lower your standards without even realizing it. You begin to see the absolute bare minimum, a single text message, a like on a photo, as a real sign of hope, as proof that you should just keep waiting. You've been trained to accept crumbs as if they were a feast. Okay, so we've defined the tactic, we have exposed the psychological trick, and we understand the addiction. Now we're going to shift from analysis to action. This brings us to part 4, the defense. This is your practical guide to reclaiming your power and breaking this destructive cycle for good. The defense is really a two-step process. It's simple, but that does not mean it's easy. It requires you to do the one thing the breadcrumber just cannot handle. You have to be direct. So, step 1 is to seek absolute clarity. And step 2 is to implement what we're going to call the all-or-nothing boundary.
So listen, the manipulator's power lives in ambiguity. That's their whole game, which means your power is in clarity. You have to refuse to play. Stop mirroring their vague, non-committal language. The very first step is to be fearlessly and unapologetically direct.
Now, this isn't just an example, it is a literal script you can use. And notice how it's built. It's not an attack, it's a calm, clear statement about your needs, followed by a direct question that needs a simple yes or no. I am looking for consistency and commitment. Are you interested in pursuing that with me? Their answer to this direct question will tell you everything you need to know. And be ready, a true breadcrumber will squirm. Any evasion, any defensiveness, any answer like, I'm not into labels, that is your answer. It's a no.
So, once you have your answer, whether they say it directly or more likely they just avoid the question, you have to implement step 2. This is the all-or-nothing boundary. And this is going to feel hard because you are breaking an addiction. It means you no longer respond to the low-effort crumbs. No more back and forth with late-night texts or vague compliments.
If their communication does not have a concrete, actionable plan that they actually follow through on, it gets zero response from you. You are cutting off their supply completely. And this all brings us to our final section. After understanding the tactic, the trick, and the defense, it all boils down to one single choice. It's a choice between the addictive illusion of hope and the liberating reality of clarity. This is your path to emotional freedom.
And I really want you to let this last point sink in. That feeling of hope, the one that keeps you checking your phone, the one that makes you hang on through all the silence, that is not your intuition. It is not a sign that things are about to get better. It is the intended, manufactured product of the manipulation. The hope you feel is a symptom of their control. You are feeling exactly what they want you to feel. And internalizing that truth is the key that finally unlocks the cage.
So as we wrap this up, it's so important to reframe what you've experienced. What feels like a confusing romance is, in reality, something much colder. It isn't just a misunderstanding. It is a communication trick, plain and simple. It's a deliberate strategy that uses intermittent reinforcement to get you emotionally addicted, all for their own gain.
And this pattern is so effective because it literally hijacks your brain's reward system. That vicious cycle of unpredictable hope and sudden withdrawal is scientifically designed to create that dopamine-fueled addiction, conditioning you to crave and celebrate the absolute bare minimum.
But here is the most important takeaway of all. Awareness breaks the loop. This entire manipulative structure is built on a foundation of ambiguity and your hope. The moment you stop accepting ambiguity and instead demand absolute clarity, the whole pattern just collapses. You take all the power back.
Ultimately, the choice really is yours. By refusing to respond to the crumbs, by putting up that all-or-nothing boundary, you are making a powerful statement. You are choosing your own self-worth over the pain of perpetual waiting. You are choosing the whole loaf because you know you deserve nothing less.